Thank you very much for your kind invitation to this conference. And it is a great honor to be here. And it is also definitely good news to all who love martial arts and who love such swords. And today, what I'm going to talk about is based on my own collections of Chinese swords. I'm going to talk about the weapon collections as well as the ancient martial art. As we know that in the spring-autumn warring state period, most of the weapons were made of bronze. The sword is a bronze sword like this. It was made in Reconstruction during the spring-autumn period. Bronze, that bronze is not as tough as iron, and it is not as hard as iron. So the technology at that time, they had special techniques to make such swords. So basically, it's just as described in literatures, such bronze swords are better when you hold your move first and attack your enemy, do it quicker when you are attacked. So such short swords, you can carry it with you. And it's easy to defend. So when the time is correct, just attack as quickly as possible to beat down your enemy within just one short moment. Just with 1, 2, or even maximum 3 strikes, you must beat down your enemy. If it is for quick attack or threshold attack, perhaps this type of a weapon may not be good enough because it's easily to be worn out and you cannot continue with your battle. So the weapons began to evolve after the warring state periods. At the late part of warring state period, see there are a lot of swords. This is one of my collections. It's over 1,000 years, still very good, very well preserved, very tough and very hard. For this piece of a weapon, now it is iron, however, it is very slender and it is not that wide, not that thick. And for this piece of a weapon, even though it's not a major weapon in the battlefield, however, it is still very good for you to carry it and to defend for yourself, for example, by way of a point stack. You hold your sword like this, you point attack first, and then you push attack forward. In the past, I always thought that, when we were young, we were very much influenced by the martial arts movies and the martial arts novels. Later, I began to practice martial arts by myself and practice Kung Fu. At that time, I didn't look into those weapons in different dynasties, and I just managed to think about, to imagine how those weapons should be used. But now, once you hold such a sword in your hand, you may feel that the techniques needed may not be the same as what you have imagined. For example, this is a hand sword, similar like a bronze sword. It is not heavy. If you cut with it, it's easy to be broken or damaged. But however, it is still a very good piece of a weapon for you to attack quickly or to point stab your enemy. So it's easy for quick attack. And just as literature says, this is a perfect weapon. When you hold your move first and once attacked, do it faster than your enemies. So after I began collecting such weapons, I realized that the whole difference is different. Sometimes when I practiced the Kung Fu when I was young, I thought about how I should use a weapon once I had it in my hand. But if you look at the swords, from the Qin dynasty to later the Song and Yuan dynasties, swords began to be popular. And at that time, swords, the shape of swords also changed from narrow blade to wide blade. For example, this one. This sword, or these two swords, they are both Song swords. You can see the blade is wider. And you can compare these two. One is Song, the other is Han. from two dynasties. So why there's such a difference in the blades? So people like me, we tend to believe, and we also consulted different literatures in China, in Song and Jin and Liao dynasties. There came heavy armors, or we call them big armors. The soldier wore heavy armor in the battlefield. If you had to fight, you must use more powerful weapons. So that's why swords, the blade of swords began to be wider than before in Han Dynasty. And the techniques also changed accordingly. So flexibility or quick attack also began to change, and more is using for slashing and cutting. So this is also from Song Dynasty. This one is a replica, is after repair. This sword is from Liao Dynasty. So the upper one is Song, the lower one is Liao. You can also compare them in this way. If you are careful enough, you may have noticed that these two swords, these four swords actually, these one thing in common. The blades are wider, and also all of them, they tilt a little bit to one side. And this one is not that obvious, but if you look at this Liao sword, it tilts a little bit to the right. This one is even more obvious. And this is one thing, is the one pattern. We used to think that maybe because of some specific scenarios that made these swords tilting. Yet there's another explanation. So during that period of time in our history, the forging techniques at that time may tend to make the swords tilting after some time of use. And some other people think, which I also agree to them, is that the swordsmith made them into such a tilting pattern deliberately for the sake of easy cutting and easy slashing. So because soldiers wore heavy armors at that time, and the blades are thicker, and with such a tilting, it's easier to cut, even though it is not a major weapon at that time in the battlefield, or just a symbol of a social status. However, such wider blade, plus this tilting blade, made it easier to cut into the heavy armor. So that's why in the Middle Age period of time in China, the weapons and the martial arts at that time, as well as the later combating was very popular. Actually, there must be a reason. So in Yuan and the Ming dynasties, swords began to disappear in battlefields. In Ming dynasty, people began to use swords again in battlefield, but still not a major piece of weapon. So at that time, they also began to have literatures on swords and swords systems. I can show you this one. This is a Ming sword, very rare, but a very typical Ming sword. This one is also a Ming sword. Still, you can use them at the battlefield. So even though people say that swords in Ming and Qing dynasties were no longer functional in battlefield, however, this one can be a very good piece of a weapon, even though it was no longer as important as in Song and the Liao dynasties. So once you were attacked, it would be a good idea to carry a sword like this to defend for yourself. Look at the tip of the sword. It's a kind of oval or goose egg shaped. I think it was made into this shape deliberately for the sake of greater pressure or intensity of a pressure. In the mid and the late Ming dynasty and the early Qing dynasty, there came firearms. That's why the functions of such swords were further weakened as a piece of a weapon in the battlefield. And usually soldiers wouldn't use swords at the battlefield any longer, but rather swords began to be popular among ordinary people. People carried, particularly those literates or scholars, would like to carry swords with them to show that they have a good piece of elegant wear. So this one looks slender, beautiful, but as a piece of weapon, its function has been weakened. This is another one during the mid to late Qing dynasty. You can see this sword is slender and thick and very light. It's easy. It's a good choice for the literati or the scholars to either wear it or have it in their study to show that they have entrusted their feelings to the swords. Actually, when we talk about the martial arts, we talk about weapons. The swords or knives, their functions or the purposes basically the same. However, they were different depending on different time, period of time, different purposes, as well as the different equipment systems in that period of time. So that's why those weapons were made for different purposes and were used for different purposes. And actually, if you have any interest in the ancient history of China, our martial art history, please pay more attention to the literatures and study further into our swords and weapons so that you can find more information to understand it better. And meanwhile, being a collector of ancient weapons, I think that it is also a essential feeling of cultural aesthetics. Sometimes at night, I would like look at the swords, appreciating them. And when I got drunk, just as one very famous poet in Song Dynasty, Xin Qiji said that I used to appreciate my swords when I got drunk at night. So for the interest of time, I would like to conclude my report. And I hope that you can find this conference fruitful. And I will be looking forward to our face-to-face communication. Thank you very much.